the shared playlist named Room 305. Spotify told on us the way apps do, cheerful, uninvited, certain. I was hunting for something loud enough to drown my thoughts when the banner slid down over my lock screen. You and Mara made a blend. The thumbnail was two circles overlapping into a third, our profile photos married by a green gradient, title in a font that should have been cute. Room 305. We don't name things like that. We have playlists called Drive and Saturday and Breathe. Room numbers belong to life before we built a door that sticks in the winter and forgives us for it. I tapped even though I knew not to. The playlist opened with a politely grim line, 97% match, and the first track that rolled up was a song we used to put on when we were new and the city felt like a dare we might accept. A guitar that knew more than it said, a drum that arrived on time. Under it, a profile name I hadn't seen in years pulsed gray, the way ghosts say present in roll call, Theo. I stared until the screen dimmed. Mara had left 6 hours earlier with her project bag and the brisk edges of focus that make rooms obey. Studio late, she'd said, her hyphen for don't wait up. She designs light. I design sound. We've built a marriage out of learning what rooms want and what they can be taught to tolerate. I scrolled. Track 2 was something new, melancholy with expensive corners, followed by a song from the year we almost broke up because the landlord thought the word market could replace the word home. Track 4, a remix, glowed like a smirk. The blend said it had been created 48 minutes earlier. It invited me to share my results, to tell the internet how well my taste matched my wife's. I closed the app before it could teach me more than it had. There's a version of me that calls her across the dark and requires her to pronounce all her verbs. The version I picked put on a jacket, locked the poolsing rectangle of confession in my pocket, and walked toward the river because the river likes to pretend it can put its hands on your chest and set your heart back where it belongs. The Sable Suites rose from Harbor Place like a sermon about brick. Theo had once joked that they'd built it for people who wanted to sleep near their reflections. I hadn't seen him since we learned to be boring on purpose. The Sable's lobby smelled like wood and apology. Behind the desk, a woman perfected, of course, like it was a sport. I stood in the doorway of the bar because bars love to tell stories to men who haven't earned them. There are 2 ways into that bar. The front gives the chandelier, the side gives the staff door, which is how men like Theo teach themselves not to be seen until the scene requires it. I waited 3 songs. That's 15 minutes in regular math, enough for a playlist to pick a personality. No one came out who belonged to my house. A couple entered with the posture of people who think dining justifies sin. A man in a blue suit pretended the bartender's name felt good in his mouth. I walked home with the song list running laps on my ribs. Truth doesn't get more accurate if you let it walk a few blocks. Sometimes it just gets colder. Mara was at the kitchen table when I opened the door, hair pinned, laptop humming like a worry. She looked up the way people do when they've practiced this scene and decided to bring their unpracticed face anyway. "You saw it," she said. "Room 305, I said, and placed the phone between us like a time bomb that had already gone off. She didn't flinch. "Kitchen or small room?" she asked. "The small room is what we call the corner where the ugly lamp lives, the rug that forgives, the chair no guest wants. It's where we take things that deserve gentleness more than theater." "Kitchen," I said. "Let the refrigerator hear us." Exhaled, not theatrical. "Theo got the Sable gig," she said. "He wanted me to hear The Wall after hours because he thinks light only tells the truth when the city is sleeping. He played a track he thought would seduce the room. I opened my phone to pull hours instead and fat-fingered the invitation. Blend. First title that came to mind. Habit and a door number, not fair to you, not even accurate. We listened to half a song. He said the kind of sentence that works on people who haven't loved me. I kissed him once to make him stop talking. It tasted like his idea of me. I left. What did you want? I asked, because the only answer I can carry is the one that doesn't pretend to be moral. To see if the old switch still worked, she said. The one labeled ruin and call it clarity. It does. I reminded myself it's not a light I like the person I am in. I looked at the list again because pain sometimes loves paperwork. Do you want him? Spilled out softer than I expected. I want an hour where no one is asking me to keep the air from falling, she said. He impersonates that hour well. You are the hour, even when you hate the clock. We stood inches apart, not touching, like choreography redesigned for people attempting adulthood. My hands needed a job, or I was going to do something I'd need to apologize for in a voice I didn't respect. I took the takeout menu we've turned into a constitution and uncapped the pen that lives near the lemons. Truth before playlists, I wrote. Mara came to my side and leaned into the bad lamp's yellow. If a room wants to borrow my ears, I ask your mouth for permission first, she said and wrote it. I added, if you think you have to kiss someone to learn you don't want them, tell me before your body does the experiment. She underlined tell twice, like a threat against ourselves but in a loving way. Storm or quiet? She asked, a small tilt to the word that barely concealed please. Quiet, I said, and then the kind of storm that doesn't need spectators. She moved first, which is one of the many things I'm loyal to. Her mouth found the place under my ear where the city no longer gets a vote. I set both hands at her hips like anchors. She lifted herself onto the counter without self-consciousness because she builds engines for a living and bodies are just precise physics when the light behaves. We were careful, then greedy, then careful again because yes loses value if you spend it like a tip. We stopped before we turned sex into a press release. We stood forehead to forehead until our breath stopped being important. In the morning, Spotify congratulated me on my taste. Share your match, it chirped, as if this weren't an autopsy. I deleted the blend before the algorithm could decide to love it for me. Mara forwarded me an email she'd already sent. No more after-hours DMOS. Invite me to boardrooms, not bedrooms. Blend reserved for kitchen. Theo replied with what passes for sincerity in that category of man. Understood. He CC'd the project manager as if the BCC were a priest. For a while the city mindlessly rehearsed kindness. We did laundry wrong together and called it charming. I built a soundscape for a museum that wanted to make wind feel like history. Mara tuned a projection so subtle the wall blushed. When the bad hour arrived, she pressed my hand between her shoulder blades and mouthed quiet into my skin and jealousy. A weather pattern, not a statute, drifted away. Then my phone decided to be petty with a different flair. New follower on the blend. It announced 2 days later, like a socialite. The gray circle with Theo's initials had acquired a ring, the little crown Spotify gives when someone chooses to watch you in your tiny domestic wilderness. I sent Mara a screenshot and typed nothing. She replied, I'll fix it, and 5 minutes later the circle disappeared. Then a second message, Storm. Yes, I wrote, and the door knew what to do. We didn't fix anything. We practiced. She slid into my lap with the competence that always surprises me by not surprising me, kissed me like punctuation, then like an argument she wanted to win, then like a treaty we might keep. I answered with a rhythm our house has learned to hum in any light. We stopped when stopping meant more for tomorrow than continuing meant for tonight. Weeks passed in their noisy, dignified way. We fell back in love with boring, which is to say we got good at being extraordinary when nobody was keeping score. The playlist kept trying to resurrect itself like a bad idea with a strong password. I made a ritual of deleting it. Mara made a ritual of telling me when the city tried to get in her mouth. Our rule sheet got more ridiculous. We added, if the knight wants to duet, we go solo in the kitchen first. We taped a lemon to it for no reason other than to be scolded by something bright. Of course we saw him again. The river never learned subtlety. At a donor dinner held where old cranes used to lift things heavier than promises, Theo drifted over holding a glass the way men hold certainty. He nodded at me with that new humility he'd been practicing and said to Mara, "The wall sings," she said. We tuned it, and he accepted plural like a man who had finally learned grammar. He left before the room could be tempted. We went home with money's aftertaste on our tongues and replaced it with something honest. In the small room, under the ugly lamp, she pulled my shirt over my head like a magician who refuses flourish, and I loved her exactly for that. We made out like we were 18 with better judgment. We stopped not because we had to, but because luxury is being able to carry some of the yes into the next morning intact. On a Wednesday that remembered how to be spring, my phone offered me another gift. A memory for you, it said, and this time the thumbnail was the two of us at our own counter, flour on our hands, faces unserious. I pressed play and the stupid strings did their best. I let them. In the footage, my hand goes to her back at the exact second she laughs, and I could see us choosing. That's the thing algorithms cannot fake, the way people become a decision. The Sable sent one of those spray and pray emails that begins "Dear Valued" and ends in pity. "Loved your visit," it read. "Return special." I closed it and opened a shared note titled Rules and wrote, "If marketing loves you, you are probably not in danger. If marketing is personal, run." Mara drew a tiny running man next to it. We laughed until the bad lamp admired us. I would like to tell you that the playlist never reappeared. It did because life is stubborn. A month later at 12:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with "Theo added your song to room 305. I sat up to see which one he thought belonged to us and learned it was the most boring of our library, a track we use to test speakers because it forgives shallow rooms. I laughed out loud in the dark and woke Mara. She squinted, read, and swore. Then she opened the app, removed him with the authority she saves for men who need to be told they're not nouns, and replaced the song with the quiet. "Storm or quiet?" I whispered. "Quiet first," she said, rolling into me. "Then we'll see if we need weather." We didn't that night. We lay there matching breath until sleep found a way to break in without setting off our alarms. I don't know if this is a story about betrayal. The word makes me tired. It's a story about the non-fatal ways people remember they're alive and the domestic spells you learn to counter them. It's about the fact that we let devices draw maps, and sometimes the pins point to rooms we entered and left, and sometimes they point to the kitchen where we learned to hold still while our bodies argued for us. The blend still exists in my recently deleted, faint, gray, patiently counting down 30 days. Sometimes at lunch I scroll to it the way you pass the window of a store you don't intend to enter and glance at your reflection anyway. Every time, Mara's name is still there, and mine, and the little caption that says 97% match like a boast. Apple would call that a metric. I call it luck, labor, and the ugly lamp we keep forgetting to replace. Last night when the city finally shut up and even the river ran out of verbs, Mara pressed her mouth to my collarbone and said, "Don't start without me." It's ridiculous how good that line still feels. I said, "Then come here," and she did, and the only playlist we needed was the sound of a door we owned sticking a little and letting go. We kissed like a habit that refuses to be boring. We stopped because stopping is how we make tomorrow beg for us. If you're asking whether I deleted room 305, the answer is yes. If you're asking whether it will come back, the answer is probably. If you're asking what we do then, we stand in our kitchen, under bad light we love, with our palms flat on a table that knew us before anyone named a song after a room, and we begin again with the rules written by two people who learned that intrigue is an algorithm. But fidelity is a choice you practice until it feels like breathing.